So this is a webinar on getting ready for GDPR. My name's Jack Rotherham. I'm a sales engineer at LogPoint. I've been with the company for some time now. And this is just going to be a quick highlight through. I'm not going to bore you to death with the same facts that you'll see everywhere else in terms of what the criteria is and how it's going to kind of impact you. What I'm going to look at is more specifically the elements that revolve around the IT aspect and the securing of data and the network, and more importantly, that personal data within the network. So, as you will all be aware, it's about a year to go now, just under. It becomes mandatory in that at the end of that year, and it is very much seen as a modern upgrade to the Data Protection Act. So basically what that means is, rather than making a good attempt at securing the personal data, it is very much a hot subject, especially with the amount of data breaches that have happened over the last number of years. So GDPR was actually brought in place last year in April. So they've given everyone 2 years to get everything in place and be ready. Now, because of that fact, the ICO have come out this week and said there will not be a grace period. Now, they will take a measured and common sense approach, as they do with all other compliance views. However, if people aren't showing stability or showing that they have made a good effort in order to comply with GDPR, they will be looking to penalise. So the fundamentals, again, don't want to bore you too much with the countless bits that you will have seen time and time again everywhere, but fundamentally, it's allowing people to get access to their own data, to consent to have their data as well. That's a big important one. So hopefully that means no hidden tick boxes and no hidden small print anymore. Right to data portability, so that is the ability to easily grab the data down from the system itself, be able to hand that to the user to say that that is all their data that we currently hold. And in the same breath of that, being able to gather all that data and remove it from the system entirely, so the ability to be forgotten or to have the data removed. Now that's going to be quite a complex one for people to handle. Just down to the fact that certain systems are going to probably need redesigning. And the other aspect of that is the appointment of a dedicated data protection officer. So you have to have someone that's in charge of that personal data now. So if in the event that there is a breach, there is someone that's fundamentally responsible. And at the same time, that person must be able to notify all the parties involved, as well as the Information Commission, and have a good process in place to deal with that. So, the fundamentals of GDPR is, or from an IT security aspect, knowing where the data is, knowing where people are accessing the data from, and who actually has access to that data, and also where they're accessing it from. And if that data is on the move, where it's going from and to. So the combination of those elements actually kind of starts bringing to the forefront the concept of SIEM solutions. So SIEM solutions have been around for a number of years now. People have been told through the compliances, I need to have a SIEM or an event log management system, but they don't necessarily understand why and what they need that for. So the reason why I mentioned that is to go through these points. There is 3 fundamental pillars which run through most compliances that GDPR is not immune to, which is the data, the personal data, the subject's data must be secured. That means monitoring of boundaries, monitoring of data. It must be controlled, so monitoring users' privilege and what they have access to, and it must be audited. So that is all about looking at if data is being accessed, who's accessing it? If people's privileges are being changed, then who has changed them? Now, what this will also allow you to do, because you've got all this log information coming back, you could also have an issue where some of the personal data, some of the names and the rest of them might, for some reason, be written to a log and then be coming into the system. So the SIEM solution also has to be able to manage itself in the same way as all the other endpoints and servers that you are looking at managing. So that means the SIEM solution itself must be able to store audit information about who's accessing what's in it, and be able to control who is accessing what. So you must have that permission model. So as I've mentioned, SIEM fits into the picture because you can fire data at it or a SIEM solution from all manner of locations. So this could be your Windows event logs, it could be flat files, it could be your web server logs, it could be SQL logs or SQL audit information. Even data from a SQL database, so it could be a table. If you've got a system that writes its audit log or its permissions to a table, you may choose to feed that information, that table of information, into the SIEM solution. Similarly, from your perimeters, so your firewalls, your VPN servers, and your IDS, IPS, AV, it's all about bringing that information in, and then you get that single pane of glass, that single view, so you can monitor access to all your systems, not just all the systems in a whole, but also specifically those systems that are holding the personal data. And you can also then have a full log track record and audit record of the security of those systems. So who is using them, how they're using them, what they're accessing. And the key point is, in the event that you do have, there is the unfortunate occasion of there being a breach, the logs collected, because they're now stored on an independent server, you don't have to worry about retaining certain amounts of log information on each individual device and consuming a lot of space. Because that data is now all pulled back into a single location, you've now got the ability to report on that and produce the report out the back end of the SIEM solution, be able to produce it, give it to either the regulators or maybe an investigation panel if there has been a breach. That information is there and available. You don't have to then start going through those individual point solutions or point servers in order to get that information collated, which is quite a time-consuming task. So, as you may guess, I may have been a little bit hungry when I started to do these slides. So, the right ingredients for monitoring compliance. So, in order to comply with what we've been talking about in terms of GDPR, those individual kind of layers of what needs to be monitored and watched, there's actually only a finite amount of devices that you need to really look at. And that is typically your Windows or your Unix servers. So that would be your event logs or your system logs, as well as the Active Directory. So enabling auditing on things like Active Directory, also doing file auditing. So any shares that have that vital, crucial data on, enabling file auditing so you can then start tracking changes. Similarly with SQL auditing, because you may have SQL users rather than Windows users. So seeing if anyone is using those or if a program is trying to use those to get data out in a flat sense, just exporting it directly out of SQL. The IIS logs, so that's bringing in your access. So that could be access to external facing services. It could be internal applications as well. And your third-party application security logs. So this is more from a Windows Unix front. I know I've put Windows at the top header, but it could also account for a Unix solution as well. But getting those third-party logs as well. So if they're writing into a database or a flat file, being able to bring those in and then start comparing and correlating those against all the rest of the estate. Again, it just adds to that picture. And then we move on to the outside. So I mentioned them already. So the firewall logs, so we're seeing who's accessing what inbound, but also who's potentially accessing what outbound. There are a fair amount of the data breaches that happen at the moment, which are a case of something has got into the network and it is feeding the data out. So being able to actually track who's going on what. So maybe bringing your proxy logs or fundamental file logs in, or firewall logs, and then correlating that with a threat intelligence feed, for example. You can then see if any of those sources or destinations that those users are going out to actually appear on known malicious or illegal or undesirable sites. Similarly, if there are files or applications running in the network that are trying to reach out to the internet, again, seeing if they are reaching out to known command and control networks. It's all good data. It's all stuff that, again, adds to this bigger picture. Same with the VPN log. So if you've got people on holiday, or if they are set to be leaving or have been put into suspension, making sure that they're not actually being able to connect in via VPN or monitoring what they're doing via VPN. Again, it's another layer of control, another layer of that view. I know last year I was involved in a investigation where we were looking through, and we found that there was a user that was in the office, but also appeared that whilst they were in the office, they were also actually VPNing in. Now, how that could be the case without someone else having their credentials, it's quite challenging to kind of put together. But because we were bringing in physical access system information, so we knew the user was physically in the building, we could then actually start pulling back and saying, well, actually, that user had nothing to do with it. Someone's managed to get the credentials, so it's a credential breach. And finally, the endpoint security log. So again, it's just completing that picture. And carrying on with these things. So, bringing all that together, enriching that information coming in. So as I've mentioned, taking information from databases or other systems, not so much log information, but valuable information. So it could be actually importing information from Active Directory about the user to give a more complete view of that user in relation to its log. It just gives you that better picture. And again, bringing the threat into it, it gives you more context. And that's the big, more kind of key word is context. Context of the information that you're bringing in from systems. And at the end of this, I kind of like to look at it, is GDPR a compliance regulation? Yes. But is it going to help IT processes and functions and give IT the ability to better align systems and policies and processes together? And will it give them the power to do that within the business? Can be quite a substantial pushback at times from business to change a process that has always been done in the way it's been done, because it's just that, it's the way it's always been done. So having that little stick or the wall put in the way to say, we have to change this now, otherwise we're not going to comply, GDPR doesn't then stop just being a regulation to comply to. It actually starts empowering change. It empowers you to be able to start bringing things more in line with each other. And so all these disparate processes and systems can actually start being brought together. So what I want to show you now is how we would go about getting this in the LogPoint solution. So we've talked about all the feeds we're going to be getting in. So in my solution, I've got two here. I've got one without GDPR pack imported already, and I've got one with them. So importing it in is nice and easy. So we have a portal which all customers, both free and paid, can go onto, and they can download the applications. They're called app packs. We class them as applications, but what they actually are, it's the content for a particular vendor or solution type. So in my system and the demo system that I'm going to be using, we've already got a number of sources going in. So we've got a firewall, at least one. We've got some servers. We've got some file servers. We've got some Active Directory servers. We've got some DHCP and DNS going in there as well. And just a few logs from general servers as well, just so we've got a good feel of things going on. What I need to do is get our GDPR pack. So we'd go to our application portal, we'd download that pack, and then what we'll do is upload it into our system. So it's nice and easy. We just come in, We go into system. We go into our applications. We click import. In fact, this has actually got it in already, but I can go through it again. It's not a problem. And we go in. We go signing for it. And then we just pick our application, open it, upload it. And that will bit because it's already imported. But it would just bring in, at which point we get this nice little line item. From there, what we can then actually do is start exploring the content. So this brings a number of components in. This brings me a nice set of dashboards, which I can then add in by clicking the add, go into my dashboard, I use, and I can just select them. As part of this, it's going to ask me about repositories. So the way LogPoint works in the background is when we bring the logs in, they don't just store them into a single table or multiple tables for each vendor type. It's no SQL, it's a flat view database, if you like, at that point. Everything that comes in, it gets indexed and normalized, or normalized and indexed through a range of signatures. And then they get stored in the back. The metadata of that index is what we use for our key value pairs. So that would be our column and value options in the database, if you like. So the GDPR pack doesn't do that because this is vendor agnostic at this point. It's that layer over the top. For all our Windows applications, things like that, that's what's happening in the background. But once it comes in, we then store it into our repositories. Now, the repositories can have different retention times. So we can have some for 30 days, 90 days, we have it for 365 days. We could also have repositories that kind of move through. So we might keep it on some nice, expensive, high-speed disk to begin with for the first 60 days because it's more likely to be searched through in those 60 days. After that 60 days and for the remaining 305 days, you might actually choose to store it on solar storage. And we can have the system automatically cascade that down into the disk in the repositories accordingly, like that. So one of the things we do when we do the dashboards is we configure them and we set them up to what we want the dashboards to point to. So in these two dashboards, I specifically only really want to look at my Windows and firewall logs. So I just tick them and choose my repositories, and you can see it's assigned all the repositories. Then I go away and click OK. It will now add those dashboards to my view. You can see them across. So I'm going to move to our demo system now, because that's got a lot more information than what I've got in my own environment. And you can see our dashboards are labeled, so we've got chapters on them. So these chapters are relating to the chapters for GDPR. So chapter 3 is all about access policies, and chapter 5 then starts talking about the external connections and how and where data is being accessed from or going to. So just to give you an idea of what we've got. So things like the account management, we're looking at groups that have been added to all users that have been removed from them. That users created and deleted, and we're not just tracking the user that's been created, but we're also tracking the user that's been making the changes. So for example, you can see here, we generally have two services that we use for our account creation and deletion, which is the ZSR, SBC. And we've got a second version of it as well, ZSVR, ZP, SBC. The accounts that were typically used to create and delete users. But we can actually see that we've got users that are bypassing that and creating users without using the correct account, or they might not be using the account management system that would use that service account in our case. So the account management system has its own audit log that we would bring in, and that's how we would know who's creating what. But we would fundamentally have the rights to do the creation and deletion assigned to a service account for that account management system. And we can also see if people are clearing the audit logs as well on servers. So we see Bob has been doing a lot of audit log clearing. So what has Bob been doing? And so we've got file access as well. So this is more looking at that auditing of those sensitive file shares. And these dashboards can be changed, they can be added to and removed from or IDs on. And I know I'd say that because I work with it. But It is very easy. This is just showing files accessed at this point, and also data that's been copied to removable devices. So I'm using we've got an endpoint solution which monitors any data going to and from USB or CD or even flashcards. And this is what the information is that we're getting here. This data is being written to a USB stick, for example, which is fine, it's permitted. But if you have a USB stick you're missing, sometimes it's quite challenging to know what's on that USB stick. So if we've now got an audit log of what's being written to each stick, if we have a loss of a USB stick, then we can report, okay, this is the data that was on there, or these are the files that were on there. If we have a copy internally still, we can then very quickly find out what data has been lost. And we've got things like general access. So this talks about different network logins, inactive users being used, or passwords not being set longer than 90 days. So this is working on our general user policies. So things that are typically good or best practice in an environment. So making sure passwords are changed very regularly and making sure that inactive users are disabled. And then we've got a few different bits in there as well about logins and different versions of failed login, because some are fine. People forget passwords, people leave caps lock on, it happens. However, if you've got multiple attempts happening on a single user account, then that's an issue. Or if you've got a single user account trying to log into multiple servers and failing, again, that could be an issue. That could be someone trying to get to where they shouldn't be. And if that's one of those sensitive servers with personal data held on it, then again, we could have an issue. Finally, we've got things like the network access. So again, this is monitoring that perimeter. Policies, so this is all about the Active Directory policies and the auditing. So knowing who's changing what, again, could have an impact in things in the long run. And finally, our international connections. So this is where we're taking the information from the firewall, so what's going out, what's coming in, and we're then using a process on that called the GRIP process, which then allows us to see where the data is coming from and to. Now, what we can do with this, again, we could add to these dashboards. We could have a widget that says, show me all the countries within Europe that data is going from or going to. And then that gives us a nice view where we can start looking at that. So for example, here we've got an actual generic Europe tag. So what we can do with these is if we pick Germany for a second, actually, what we can do is these graphs are all interactive. So the tables and the graphs are interactive. And we can actually just view the data behind that graph if we need to. Nice. Click and view, at which point we get the list of data. He says, oh, no, oh, we don't. Ah, there we go. It was taking a little bit longer. And so from this view that we're going back to, we'll also be able to see the way we organize the data. So I talked earlier about those the NoSQL and the key value pairs. This is what we'll then be showing. So if we go into our search, my connections. Okay. I'll go for mine actually, just in case. I've got very limited information in here, but I can certainly go through it to show you. Just make sure. But so you can see in here how we organize the data. So the bottom row is the raw information, that's how it's come in. And then the top two rows here is how we've then split that data into its key value pairs. So that column and value view, if you like, of the database. And then finally, we've got these little labels at the top, which is our context. So this is how we start adding meaning to logs as soon as they're into the solution. Let's just read these two, make it a bit more palatable. Have them in here first. So again, you can see in here. And then what we've got in here is we've got our follow information. So you can see how we're taking the information from here, so things like the destination address, and then correlating that with the GIP on those graphs to be able to view what's going on. So again, you can see those dashboards, they're quite light, they're quite simple, but the data that's potentially driving behind them is actually quite complex. There's quite a bit of information there. So having to go through those processes manually could be quite a time-consuming task. So just to finish, just wanted to leave you with a few thoughts. We'll do a couple of questions if anyone's got any after. There's just a year left until this GDPR gets enforced. There was a survey performed recently, and it's also at the bottom, Computer Weekly. So the survey is for over 200 UK and US companies, and they found that 24% knew they were likely to miss the deadline. There were only 15% of those companies, which is shy of 16%, that were actually in advanced planning stages, and there was 30% that actually had no timetable at all. So I guess the note to leave on is the fact that there's a year left, so there's plenty of time left, but it's not one of those, the amount of change that needs to go in, it's not something you want to leave to the last minute, really. You do want to start planning, investigating, and starting applying and processes in the next 6 months, really, I would say. That would be your sweet spot, if you like, to start getting in time. Right, so at this point, I was wondering if there's any questions. You should be able to do a raise hand if you have any. Okay, Shane, hopefully this does now work. Where's it gone? Where's it gone? Oh, it's dropped off. Right. Right, Shane.
Yes. Sorry, are you able to hear me?
Hello.
Hi.
Yes. Yeah,
So
sorry.
my question was just out of curiosity, who oversees the regulation and auditing for the GDPR? I may have missed that at the beginning.
Okay. So the people that are going to be overseeing and enforcing it in the UK is the ICO, so it's the Information Commission Office. They are going to be the ones that are sending people to the door, essentially,
Sure.
To audit.
Okay, so my next question then is that if we are being monitored and audited by a UK body, I'm actually work for an American corporation whose HQ is in the US. So how does that relate? Does that mean that they would liaise directly with the US, or does that mean that somebody is responsible or made responsible in the UK or within the EU?
It would depend, actually. So regardless of where the company is, be it in the UK or the US, if you are handling the data from a European country or a European citizen, then you would have to have someone responsible. Now, whether you chose that to be someone in the UK or someone in the US, that would be purely down to your company and how the organization is structured. But sure, they would liaise with that person regardless if they're in the US or the UK.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Any more questions? Okay. I'm not seeing any more hands raised or any Q&A in the chat. So There's information on the screen there. So if you want more information about LogPoint and how we fit into that GDPR picture, please visit our website, logpoint.com. Also, there is a free version on there to get a feel of how it works. And if you need any more information, feel free to either contact on the website or my colleague Hayworth's information is on that slide. I would like to thank you all for attending and wish you all a good day and a good weekend. Thank you all.